All right, I want to give you a little demo on a project I've been working on with the group. Um, the reason we did this project is we wanted to teach ourselves how to use React Native. If you're not familiar with React Native is a tool you can use to create mobile apps that are universal. So you could create a mobile app with Android Studio and Kotlin or Swift and Apple's development tools, um, which is good. It's honestly going to perform. It's probably going to have higher performance. However, if you want to write it, if you want a tool to write apps that will work on both devices, React Native is a good way to do it. So the tools that we used to pull off this app is we used React Native. We used a tool called Expo Go. Expo Go is what we use to show our app to other people. It's also a good way to debug and to test. Expo Go, the way if we wanted to, for example, if I wanted to show this app to someone, we'd use this QR code, and anyone who scans this QR code can use our app. That's the neat thing about using Expo Go. Expo Go is also nice for debugging because as I'm coding and looking at my app on my phone, it will update in real time. So if I make a change, I can save it and I can see if the change worked. And if the change didn't work, if I get errors or warnings, those errors and warnings will also be displayed on my screen, on my phone screen, which is really nice because debugging can be it can be quite complicated in React. I won't lie to you. So to get started, we're going to talk about this app.js file. Anytime you're going to do a React Native mobile app, you will use almost just about every app will have an app.js unless there you can use TypeScript as well, but for our purposes, we're using JavaScript. And anyways, what I'm trying to say here, the point of this app.js file, one of its biggest jobs, and definitely for our app, it's only one and only main job, is to navigate through your app. And so as you can see here, we've got something called a stack navigator. And actually, before I get into that, I'll just briefly talk about this. Up at the top, these are all our imports. These are our libraries. And in this case of this screen, we're also importing the different JavaScript files we're using for our other screens. We're importing those so we can use them in our stack navigator. And a stack navigator is what it sounds like it is. It's a stack that's going to push and pop off screens so you can navigate through your program, or excuse me, through your app. So the first thing you'll see on a stack navigator that's important to note is the initial route name. That all this means is this is the initial route name is telling the stack navigator where the first screen is that it should go to when the app opens. So in our case, it's the home screen. So let's take a look at that. If we go to the home screen, and you can note our hierarchy here. We have the app.js at the top level, and then all of our other screens are going to be within our source screens. And then we said we're going to home page. Okay. So within the home page, will be the first screen that it takes you to. The way it works at the top, again, we have our imports. We're not importing a bunch of other screens this time. We're just importing what we need for this screen, our libraries. And so something that's going to be similar with all our pages is there's going to be a main component. And within that main component, we're going to return a view. And this view goes down to the bottom here. Anyways, it's one big view is what I'm trying to say. And within that view, we have multiple components. The home screen is just a bunch of buttons. In React Native, you have a button, but you also more commonly use this touchable opacity. Touchable opacity is just going to be a way that you can put an image or text or whatever you want to use for a button. And you're going to have an on-press function. It's going to give some logic to the button. In our case, our on-press function is just going to use the stack navigator, and we're going to call the .navigate function to go to animals. To animal. That will take us to our animal module, because that's the animal button. And what that actually looks like, I'm going to use a web view to show you. It looks a lot better on a phone, obviously, because this is a mobile app, not a web app that we're building. But just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to show you what the app looks like. So when you open the app, this is the first thing you'll come to. It's the home screen. And let's go to, as I was mentioning, animals here. This is touchable opacity. Below, we have another touchable opacity with another image. And the logic of that function is going to, again, use a stack navigator or navigate method to take you to that screen. And so as you can see, those are different buttons. Each one of these is a touchable opacity. We'll click on animals, and that's what you'll see when you click on that. So I guess some good things to note about React Native is every view, well, you don't have to, but every view that we have is going to have some style. If you have done some web development, this will look pretty familiar to you. The style is essentially you're using CSS, and you can give different components within your view different styles. So you'll do that by, we have one big component that is just the style sheets container, essentially. And then you have all these different styles within. So you'll notice we have a button image style that we just give it two components, a height and a width. And that's all we really need for our image. So I guess what I'm trying to show you here is each component has its own styling if you want it to have it that way. You just, for example, there's a touchable opacity. This one happens to be the hangman to take you to our hangman game. And we gave it button style because it's a button. So all our buttons are going to have the same style. There are different styles. Maybe I can show you. Let's see. An image. Okay, yeah, sorry. It took me a second to find it, but here's another example of where we're using style. Obviously, our title is not going to have the same styling that we want our buttons to have. So that's why you can create your own unique style. So this is pretty universal. So if you are going to learn React Native, you'll want to learn how to style like this. So essentially I know I'm rambling a little bit, but what I'm trying to tell you here is you're going to have one style sheet component that's going to, within that component, you're going to have all your different styles with a title, and then in between the brackets, you'll put in the styles you want. So that is how that works. And that is essentially what our app does. I'll show you one other Easter egg we put in our app. I can't take credit for this one, but it's not going to look very nice. So you can disregard how it's formatted, because this is obviously a web browser, not a phone. If it was on a mobile device, it would look a lot nicer. But we've got a little hangman game that one of my teammates put in here. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You just have these little hearts will disappear as your hangman gets filled up to show you how many more tries you have. I've got 2 more tries apparently. And now I've just got 1 more try and game over. So it's kind of a fun little game. This is an English, if I didn't say, forgive me if I didn't say in the beginning, it might be a little confusing. This is the app we decided to create is an English learning app. So the point of Hangman is just to help people learn new words in English. And using, actually, another thing I can point out that's kind of nice about the tool we're using, Expo, it's going to just give us a back button. We didn't have to write any code for that back button. It just defaults. Anyway, so they always have that if you're using Expo. And that is basically our app. So as I mentioned, it's English learning. So each module is going to have a flip card. It's going to have the image and text, so you can learn some English. And I guess one cool feature I can show you about our development environment, because we're using Expo, if we make changes, we can see those changes right away. So let me give you an example. We'll go to the animal screen. So we just looked at the top, we saw a zebra. So the way this works, we have a reusable component called flashcards that one of my teammates put together for us. And we just use a dictionary to store an image, which is just link it here. and just the text. But anyways, sorry, I was getting a little distracted here. What I was trying to show you is with Expo, if you were to make changes on the go as you're developing the app, it's kind of nice to know that you can save it and it will refresh for you, and you can see this change right away. So if now we go there, look at that, it's a frog. It's actually a zebra. But the reason I'm telling you that is if you are going to learn React Native, it's really nice to be able to use Expo to see your changes as you're developing. And I can't show you here, unfortunately, because it's the web view. But another nice thing about Expo is if you have errors or bugs that you need to fix, like if I were to type some gibberish code that is obviously not React Native code, I'll type it in here. It's obviously going to cause an error, and debugging can be pretty tricky. And if you use an Expo, you're going to see an error message on your phone screen. Unfortunately, the web app isn't going to do that. But if you are using Expo and I guess what I mean by that, if you're using this QR code, you're going to see the error message as well as warning. So it is really nice. It's a really nice tool to have to use to debug. I can speak here. Okay, so that's our app. I hope that by watching this video, you are inspired to go and learn some React Native. It's a useful tool.